Hello and welcome to the European Report. Here we are in the heart of the European Union, in the European Parliament. And in today's programme we're going to be discussing the ongoing situation regarding Palestinian incitement to violence and terrorism and what the European Union and the European Commission can do to achieve a lasting peace in the Middle East. And in today's programme we have a special guest, Itamar Marcus, the director and founder of Palestinian Media Watch, and Tomas Sandell, the founder and director of the European Coalition for Israel, and such a strong supporter of Israel here in the European Parliament, Bas Belder, MEP for the Netherlands. So, gentlemen, welcome to the European Report. I'll firstly start off with you, Itamar. Now, you're doing incredible work with Palestinian Media Watch, but for our viewers who don't know the work that you're doing, can you describe what you do and how important it is to Israel's security, but also to that of the West?
Palestinian Media Watch believes that the key to peace is peace education. And when we were established already in 1996, just after the beginning of what was thought it was a peace process, we wanted to know what were the messages the Palestinian Authority was giving to their people, and especially to their children, in Arabic. To this end, we've been studying everything about Palestinian society, their sports pages, their education, and we see that there are two different worlds. There's an Arabic language world filled with hatred, filled with terror glorification, filled with supporting and promoting violence and terror, even today. And there's an English language world which is peaceful and claims to be supporting peace and living in two states with Israel. We want this to be exposed. Sunshine is the best disinfectant. Our hope is that once this is out there, the leadership, there'll be pressure from places like the European Union. And this pressure will eventually bring about a change. That is our hope, so that in the future we can have a generation of Palestinian children who want to live with peace in Israel and not just destroy us.
Absolutely. And Thomas, can you give us a little bit of an update on some of the activities of ECI, also the fact that the UN has now officially recognised Yom Kippur as a UN holiday?
The last month of the year was very important for us. We were here in the European Parliament. We had a symposium on Jewish contributions to European culture and values to illustrate how much good the Jewish people have contributed to our way of life in Europe, and that Europe simply wouldn't be the same without these Jewish communities. In the United Nations, as you said, we had a major victory on the last Friday before Christmas, when the UN decided to make Yom Kippur a UN official holiday. And one needs to remember that in the past, all religion except for the Jewish people had their holidays recognized by the UN. So I think even if we can see some small progress and reform, we want to rejoice and see that we can make a difference. And I think this is the message, that all these efforts that we are putting into our work is really also producing results.
Fantastic stuff. And Bas, you're such a strong supporter of Israel, a true friend of Israel and the Jewish people through your courageous work here in the European Parliament. Now, when we look at the work of Itamar Marcus and Palestinian Media Watch, and we see some of these vile and grotesque education videos that we see on Palestinian media and also in the education system, what is your response to this incitement to violence and hatred that the Palestinian people, particularly Palestinian children and teenagers, are subjected to day after day?
I must say that I'm an admirer of the work of Itamar Marcus, and every day I receive their issues, and they are very useful for me, for it is presenting the facts, and we should show up to the facts here in the European Parliament. I must say, as a father of children, a grandfather, as a former teacher of history, how these young people, their minds are poisoned by this propaganda, anti-Jewish, anti-Israeli. It is so deplorable. It is really, I I deplore these young Palestinian peoples that are shown in video clips with knives and with text that they should reside, that they should kill and be Jews and be martyrs. And what Itamar Marcus and his staff is doing, that they are showing us that peace cannot be built on such a culture of death and hatred. And what the European institutions should do to take it very serious, the work of Itamar Marcus, and on base of this sound evidence, really take action on every issue that is poisonous to the culture and the climate between Israelis and Palestinians.
And Thomas, I mean, when we focus and we see pretty much EU policy coming out towards Israel and the Middle East, it seems that the European Commission are very much focused on the EU guidelines which published, which looks to really penalise Israel for producing goods and services in Judea and Samaria, known as the biblical heartland of Israel, plus also Jerusalem, also the Golan Heights as well. But why is it the issue of Palestinian incitement to violence, which in my opinion is the key issue to lasting peace in the Middle East, is never really discussed or brought up as a major issue?
Simon, I think this whole issue is a great embarrassment for any leading politicians in Europe, and including and especially the European Commission, because we are financing what is going on. And again, there is an obsession with Israel in this chamber. There is an obsession with trying to solve a conflict which has been going on for a long time, and already before you start having in mind what the solution is. So anything that would put into question what they have invested so many hundreds of millions in is a great challenge to their whole raison d'etre of the European project. So I think it's easier to turn a blind eye to the things that are happening in the Palestinian territories, which and it's important that we say this also open and clearly, they do recognize that things are not the way it should be. And I can even say, after having had a meeting with Itamar and leading EU officials, that there is even a willingness to correct it. But nothing will happen unless we continue to have the facts on the ground that Itamar is providing us with, and that we as civil society and European Parliament and national parliaments continue to put pressure on these EU officials.
Yeah. And Itamar, I want to bring you on board on this one. I mean, can you show us or tell us, for example, examples of what you're seeing in the Palestinian Authority education system, its media, for those who are not aware? And what are some of the most shocking things that you've found that have been broadcasted?
I would say that the really shocking things at the children level is that the entire world of the Palestinian child that's created by the Palestinian Authority, I'm not talking about Hamas, that the Palestinian Authority create, is a world of demonization of Jews, depicting of Jews as being less than human, dehumanization, literally dehumanization, and likewise glorification of those who've killed Israelis and Jews. And let me give you concrete examples. There's a poem which includes the words, "Our enemy Zion is Satan with a tail." Now, we heard that on official Palestinian Authority children's program just about 2 months ago, said by a young girl, and this was the 6th time in the last 2 years that we've heard a child on Palestinian TV quoting this poem, reciting this poem, that our enemy is Zion, is Satan with a tail. Why are they teaching children that Jews are Satan? There's another poem that we've heard 3 times in the last few years, also just recently, that has the words, the Jews are the most evil amongst creations, barbaric monkeys and wretched pigs. And you see this beautiful young girl on television, and you expect that she's saying nice things, and this is the poem that she's reciting. The Jews are wretched monkeys and despicable pigs, and the most evil amongst creation. What this does for the Palestinian child, by presenting Jews as the enemy of Allah, the enemy of God, evil by our essence, it's telling them, you might make a peace treaty with Israel, You might adjust borders with Israel, but that's not going to change. If we're the enemy of Allah, then how does that change if we move our borders 10 or 15 or 20 kilometers? It doesn't change. If we're the most evil amongst creations, we'll still remain the most evil amongst creations. And if we're monkeys and pigs, we remain monkeys and pigs. So this is the tragedy of this education for children. The other side is, while Jews are depicted as subhuman, those people who kill Jews, who kill Israelis, are presented as the heroes. And I'll give you, you talk about Palestinian Authority education, we have found 25 schools in the Palestinian Authority named after terrorist murderers. And I mean the worst of the murderers. So for example, there are 3 schools named after Dalal Mughrabi. Who's Dalal Mughrabi? Terrorist who hijacked a bus with others. 37 Israelis were killed, 12 of them children. So you've got a mass murderer of children, has 3 schools named by the Palestinian Authority after her to make her into a hero. There's a school in Bethlehem that when you walk into the school, there's a picture over the front door, and it says, the heroic martyr Ayat al-Akhras, and it has a picture of her face. Who was Ayat al-Akhras? A 17-year-old girl suicide bomber, the youngest girl suicide bomber, at a high school where the girls are 17 years old. So every time they walk in and out of the door of that school, they see a picture of a role model for them. The school is telling them, this is your role model. This is your hero, someone who's your age who blew herself up killing Israelis. So when Tomas said that the main problem is dealing with this, it is absolutely true. There can never be peace if the Palestinian children are growing up thinking that Jews are the enemies of Allah, Jews are monkeys and pigs, and that those people who kill Jews are Palestinian heroes.
Yeah. Absolutely.
True.
Bas,
That they are inherently evil, so you can't.
That's
and that internalization, it is quite serious. What you said about when you look at the portrait of that mass murder, all these young children, that was in the 70s.
That's right.
It is you have
Bas,
tears in your eyes when you see that.
as a leading MEP here in the European Parliament, what can you do with other like-minded MEPs in terms of tackling this issue of incitement? Is there anything that can be done here at the European Parliament level that can have an impact on the European Commission and individual EU member states?
I think there should be, firstly, there should be more awareness here among the members of this Parliament about the useful and much needed work of Palestinian Media Watch. So you're coming here, I hope that you repeat it for that it comes to our minds what is happening, for that you are not laying any foundation of any peace solution in this conflict. And secondly, we should again and again use every opportunity to hammer down to the European Council, to the External Action Service, what you are doing towards Israel, what is the effects on the Palestinian population, on the Arab region in general. I will be concrete. Now we are here in the first half year of the Dutch presidency. Mr. Koenders from Foreign Affairs was in the Committee of Foreign Affairs. I asked him on labeling, what is the outcome of the labeling issue that the BDS movement has got a stimulus, and what you are seeing is demonization, dehumanization of Israeli products. Now I see Israeli products kill, beware, Israeli products kill. And so I asked him, you are saying labeling, you are not boycotting, but the result is that, say, in the Palestinian world, on the school in Bethlehem, they are applauding. Do you want, I asked Mr. Koenders, do you want that Hamas is applauding for what you are doing? Do you want that this is your role in the Middle East? That is contrary to your intentions. So rethink on it and take a clear position and trust the work of people like Itamar Marcus. And he's always, I know him from our delegation visit, he's always here to enlighten and to inform us in a honest way what is going on, that we are at the last, that we are set on the right track towards this, on our position towards the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. For the ways it now goes, as Tomas said, we are turning a blind eye. And we should it should be good when that also the EES and the European Commission should have a look every day on your website, what is going on. Also on the falsification of the history of Palestine. For there is also a war of history, and your website has also clear items on it.
Thomas, I want to bring you in here. I mean, surely we have to learn from history in the same way that Europe in the 1930s allowed the Nazis to indoctrinate Germany with hatred and propaganda towards the Jews, that the similar Palestinian incitement and education and media system is preparing the next generation of young Palestinians to commit acts of genocide. And surely what we're dealing with here is what's igniting hatred, violence of Palestinians towards Israelis and Jews, which amounts to effectively calls for genocide. Yeah. In your opinion, how do we create this as the big issue in the peace process that the European Union should take seriously?
I think we say repeatedly here in the European Parliament that the European Union is built on European values. European values are universal values. And if we believe in this, we cannot have it both ways. We cannot support a regime that is clearly violating the most fundamental values in our sets of beliefs. And we need to make not only the politicians but EU officials accountable to this double standard. You know, what we typically hear is not that they would be against or say that this is not true, but they always have a way of getting around it to saying, well, why is it that they are doing it? They are doing it because they don't see any other future. They don't see a political future for themselves. And I don't think we can accept this reply. We don't accept it with any other criminals or any other governments that are violating those European values. We cannot accept it with the Palestinians either. So again, it's for people like the European, our activists in the European Coalition for Israel, for Bas Belder, other members, to keep bombard them with the facts that Palestinian Media Watch is helping us with.
You said it rightly, Thomas. There is no excuse for barbarism.
No.
And for hatred. Yeah. For as a Christian, hatred is the source of killing. Yeah. Absolutely. Stabbing.
Absolutely, and it's actually just to add on to this, when they claim that they're doing it because of frustration, because there's no final solution, what they're doing is they're educating their children in a way that will guarantee there never will be a solution. Yeah. There never will be, because how can you make peace with the descendants of monkeys and pigs who are Allah's enemy? In other words, if you teach them that the problem is territory, then we can reach a solution. If you teach them, as you said, Bas, inherent problem in the Jewish nature. If there's an inherent problem in the Jewish nature that you can't solve it, then there can never be peace. And that is exactly what the Palestinian Authority is doing to the people. And by EU defending it and excusing it, they are guaranteeing that we won't have peace, and they are responsible for the wars in the next generation.
And they are creating frustration.
It's more. I've got to ask you, many of our viewers will probably want to know the difference between the Israeli education, Israeli media, and that of the Palestinian Authority. Could you compare and contrast the two for us?
There is zero resemblance. When I say zero resemblance, I mean that there is no such thing in Israel that's accepted by the government and in any of the formal schools or the government schools. Any demonization of an Arab, any demonization of a Muslim, it's even illegal in Israel to insult and demonize another religion. So it doesn't happen. It's absolutely prohibited. When an Israeli commits an act of violence or terror or killing against a Palestinian or against an Arab, the entire Israeli government and Israeli echelon and the religious leaders, everyone condemns it. And recently there was a killing of a family by an Israeli set fire. The entire Israeli population has condemned this. So what's the difference here? In Israel, when an Israeli who's an exception, who is rare, one in every number of years we have this, it is absolutely condemned in the Palestinian Authority. Not only isn't it condemned, but it's honored, it's glorified, and it's not just once every few years, it's sometimes numerous times in the same day. and all of them are honored. I'll just point out, when I say honored immediately, Ahmad Mansara is the youngest terrorist in this recent wave of terror, and I say recent, the last few months. Ahmad Mansara is a 13-year-old boy. He stabbed a 13-year-old Israeli boy in the neck and almost killed him. He miraculously survived after being in the hospital for weeks. So a 13-year-old stabbed a 13-year-old in the neck who was just riding on his bike going home from school, and there already has been a soccer tournament in Ramallah and El Bira. This is where the Palestinian Authority has its capital, in Ramallah, with many schools, the article said, many schools participating. And who is it named after? Ahmad Mansara. And you see in the picture, you see young children, probably the same age, 13, 14, 15, holding up the cup, the Ahmad Mansara cup, and you're saying, my God, all of the children in all of these schools just participated in a tournament. The message was, you want to be a hero? Stab an Israeli 13-year-old in the neck, and this just happened now. Why isn't the EU condemning this? They certainly know how to condemn Israel when we build an apartment in Jerusalem. Why aren't they condemning that the Palestinian Authority is teaching its kids, kill a Jew, you'll become a Palestinian hero?
And Thomas, the European Union itself is a big funder to the Palestinian Authority, so surely the EU should have some sort of leverage over the Palestinian Authority to stop this incitement. But aren't we as European taxpayers actually directly funding this Palestinian incitement that leads to terrorism and violence against Israelis?
Absolutely, we are. And I think Itamar, during these last few days in Brussels, has made the point very clearly. The only way to stop what we are talking about is putting financial pressure on the Palestinians. There's nobody in this world that can do it more effectively than the European Union. So there is a solution to this whole problem, and still the responsible people in Brussels are not willing to do it, and you will have to ask the question why. And in the political structure that we work, of course, nothing comes automatically. It's up to people like us, to the viewers, to raise this issue, to raise it with the members of parliaments, to write letters and demand that the EU will take action and actually make their aid to the Palestinian Authority conditional. This is not rocket science. It's common sense.
And Bas, what does it mean to you when you get letters from your constituents raising this as an issue? And how much does it make for other MPs and also members of national parliaments when they receive letters from their constituency looking at the issue of Palestinian incitement to terrorism and violence that could actually lead to genocide?
They are very welcome. They show awareness of the serious problem, and they are addressing it at the just address. Our help of the Palestinians should be conditional on the right behavior, and this is a very not only wrong, but it is a poisonous behavior that is prolonging war, prolonging murders, what we are seeing, and. My wish should be, and I try to do that with tweeting. Every time when I see something that is interesting, that people can understand what is going on, I tweet and my sources to Palestinian Media Watch to see the source and the translation. And I'm grateful to have an Arabist in my staff, so I know that what Palestinian media is showing us is honest reporting. And the issue is, and that is important. I hope that European media will more pick up, as a former journalist, I'm saying that your sources and your reporting for this is really, I think, a crucial point we should not miss in the European Union when we should really have an honest role in the whole conflict.
Gentlemen, down to the last 4 minutes of the programme, sadly. But Itamar, isn't there a great danger that the European Union have allowed this incitement to terrorism, hatred and violence, and that this is then having an impact here in Europe? I mean, we've seen here that Europe has been rocked by the horrendous terrorist attacks that we saw in Paris in November, and the same issue of incitement. Isn't there a great danger now that that many young, impressionable European Muslims can watch some of this material put out by the Palestinian Authority and then decide to attack vulnerable Jewish communities here in Europe?
Well, first of all, they absolutely can watch it, because, first of all, Palestinian television is broadcast by satellite to Europe as well. Many of these things also appear on the internet today, Palestinian television. Many of the speeches by the leaders are on their own website, so it's available everywhere. One of the things that Europe has to be very alert for is that if they are going to wait till the last second till terrorism starts, it's too late. There has been years of hate promotion and demonization and raising a generation of youth that has led to the terrorism that we're having today by teenagers and by 20-year-olds. Europe can't wait till those terrorism. Europe has to watch the education. Europe has to go into the schools. It has to go into the mosques. It has to listen to the messages. If they are peaceful messages, and they may be peaceful, then that's great, and we can move on. But if they're not peaceful messages, then you can't wait till they start shooting. You have to stop those messages and that hatred at the source right now.
Yeah. And finally, Thomas, how important is it that Christians are made aware of this and actively campaign and lobby their MEPs or their members of their own national parliaments on this issue? Because isn't this issue the crucial issue in the Israeli-Palestinian peace process that also has implications for European security?
Yeah. I would like to bring it back to Europe now, because we know that there is a rise of anti-Semitism in Europe, in European heartland. We saw it in France this past week. My point is what should be our reaction? So we have Jewish leaders in Europe saying we should stop wearing kippahs because, this may incite, provoke people to violence. And I think this is completely unacceptable for us as non-Jews, as Christians. On January 27th, it will be the International Holocaust Remembrance Day. In the next days, we will start a campaign to ask people, everyone, political leaders, civil society, church leaders, to wear a kippah on the 27th of January. And we want to do this in solidarity with our Jewish friends in Europe and across the world, to say, what we failed once, we cannot allow it to happen again. This time we want to stand together in solidarity, and to do it very visually by wearing a kippah or wearing a hat, and to say that we are not leaving our Jewish friends alone.
Superb. And Itamar, I just want to thank you very much for the incredible work that you do. It must be heart-wrenching to do the vital work that you're doing. So we thank you for raising our awareness, of bringing this to the European Parliament and to many leaders around the world. And just keep up what you're doing, because it's so important and so vital.
Thank you. It's people like Bas and Tomas and you who appreciate it and then use this politically that gives us the energy to keep going.
So, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me on today's European Report, and I want to thank you for watching this edition of the European Report, in which this European Parliament and also the European Commission has a moral responsibility and a duty to tackle the issue of Palestinian incitement, terrorism and violence, if there is to be a lasting peaceful settlement between the Israelis and the Palestinians. And the great danger is that if this is not confronted, then what we're going to see is a growing radicalisation here in Europe, where it won't be Europe's Jews being attacked, but we'll see more violence and terrorism across this continent, and no one wants to see that happening. So thank you for watching today's European Report.